Inshallah, we'll do like we did last time in Dhikr, but first I have a request for a short nasiha, which so I'm gonna, the question is about keeping up spirituality after Ramadan. And then the other thing, because these are the last few days of Ramadan, Taqseef al-Dua, or the doing dua extensively, even more than whatever we're accustomed to, whatever we're used to, is because dua, by its nature, you are recognizing that you want, or you are acknowledging the necessity of a partnership with Allah. And Allah is practically the only thing in your existence that you can ask of that will never tire of you. Even the closest human beings, blood, every other relationship, human beings all have limits. And it's a remarkable relationship that you are actually rewarded every time you turn to Allah with requests and questions, and turn to Allah in need. So we inshallah, we are trying to do a little bit of more dua tonight. Even if you don't understand the Arabic, the fact that we are together, whenever people get together for the sake of Allah, there's an enormous power in that, and an enormous blessing in that. And their ability to have their dua heard far more prominently and powerfully is augmented enormously. So while dua al-khalwa, where you are doing dua by yourself, there is an enormous power in that. But if you ever have a group of people willing to come together like ours tonight, for the sake of Allah, then this is the opportunity to extend your dua, to make more dua. And so even if you don't understand the Arabic, the fact that the dua is said on your behalf in a night like this is very significant. And it's something that, because the blessing will come to you whether you understand the dua or not. Of course, the dua, like the dua, Ibn Arabi's dua is all Quranically based. Some of the other dua that inshallah I want to repeat is the Prophet ﷺ's dua. So it's a dua that's always taken from something. Anyway, so first thing I want to say about this issue of keeping up spirituality. If you take when we went back to the Islamic Center after Laylat al-Qadr prayer yesterday, the little short speech that I gave there was so much packed in that talk. It was extremely dense, and I don't know if you guys noticed or not. But if you take that lecture, which I'm sure Grace has already posted, and listen to it and unpack every component, you will find that there's a lot already that I put in there because it was quite packed. The, other than what I said last night, um, there are a couple things of words of advice that if if there's a regular group where you meet at least once a week, and I think Sharif had mentioned something like that, where you meet once a week to do dhikr. Uh, Human beings are social animals, and because they're social animals, they often feed off each other's energy. And in the same ways that people can lead each other astray, can help each other go off the deep ends, they can also help each other walk a good path and a righteous path. So, halaqat al-dhikr is, you don't have to be a Sufi or a murid, a student of some Sufi past to believe in halaqat al-dhikr, to believe in a circle of dhikr. If you want to keep up your rawhaniya, and rawhaniya, we say spirituality, and spiritualism has a bad word in the Western world, but the rawhaniya, in Arabic or in the Islamic context, it, it basically means that you are acknowledging the ever-pervasive spirit of Allah in everything, which already surrounds you. أينما تكونوا, that wherever you are, Allah is there. But it is very much like the oxygen that we breathe. There are, people who can breathe the oxygen and be conscious of the fact that they're breathing oxygen, and they don't need to be, suffocated half to death to be grateful for the oxygen they breathe. Some, hardheads are like that. They will not be grateful for the oxygen unless you actually strangle them, and then they get the point. But don't be like that, because that's the path of the idiots. Be among those who celebrate Allah's presence without Allah having to teach you the hard way by withdrawing from you. And one powerful way to celebrate Allah's presence, all pervasive presence, all around you and with you, everywhere, is halaqat al-dhikr. To get together with, whether you do it in a family, whether you do it together as friends, whether you do it as brothers and sisters, whatever to have a regular occasion where you come together and you remember Allah, and in doing that, you'll find a great power in that. And we have as people, we have a bad habit of acquiring good habits during Ramadan and then dropping them during the year, and that's extremely unfortunate. Um, uh, because Ramadan is supposed to be like, moving you in various stages in your life to a higher level of consciousness and existence, rather than it giving you a boost and then you atrophy back again, and then you spend the rest of your life where you take 2 steps forward in Ramadan and then 2 steps backwards after Ramadan. Rather, your philosophy should be that you work hard all through the year, and then Ramadan comes where you ask Allah to carry you to another level of consciousness, another level of being, another level of understanding. So, uh, so there's so much to say about this one. Okay, so other than collective dhikr, the other thing that is, many of us we never learn to be if the beginning of the path and the beginning of wisdom is to learn to be comfortable by yourself. When you say by yourself, that really means in Allah's presence and nothing but Allah's presence. Many of us, the minute we are alone, we effectively start breaking down. We never learn to be comfortable with ourselves in a state of khalwa. Every sage that you ever heard of in the history of humanity spends an enormous amount of time in khalwa, in isolation. Like the Prophet ﷺ in Ghar Hira, and after Ghar, and all the Sahaba. Unfortunately, I saw these before they were torn down. Each Sahabi had a little masalla in Medina, which was basically the size maybe of half this room. And it was in the 80s, when I visited Medina, I saw the various masalla that belonged to where they would do their khalwa, where they would actually sit. And sadly, they've been torn down by in the more recent expansion plans, which is like so much of Mecca's and Medina's heritage. But the point is that if you want to, even if you take 5 minutes of every day, if you're not scared of the dark, do it in the dark. You don't need to do it in the dark, but especially if you're not accustomed to it. What I've often done to be in to augment my state of khalwa is I wear this, and I pretty much cover my face with it, so I have no distractions. And when you are, and during that time that you are in isolation, do it as much as, but regularity is far more than length of time. So it doesn't do much good if you do it for half an hour one day, but then you skip 2 weeks. I would much rather you do it 1 minute a day, but do it regularly, than go in all gung-ho and fizzle out, as so many people do. But as much as, whether it's 5 minutes each day or 15 minutes each day, or where you sit by yourself with Allah, not engaging in any memorized ritual, because rote memorization often helps distract us from confronting and thinking about ourselves. And in this state of khalwa, there should be one question that you always start with, and that is by yourself, with your own track record that only you and Allah knows, because only you know what your thoughts are and what your problems are and what your issues are and what goes inside of you. Are you happy with your relationship with Allah? أتحسن الظن بالله. Fundamentally, when we say, are you happy with your relationship with Allah, is where your consciousness is, where your state of being is. Do you think well of your Lord, or do you not think well of your Lord? Many of us, when we are being entirely honest with ourselves, we discover that we are often not sure whether we are very trustful of Allah, or whether we are bitter towards Allah, or whether we are angry towards Allah, or we have grievances, especially as the Prophet ﷺ says, "Zalaw," where you say, only if God would have given me this, or only if this or that happened in my life, or only if this or that did not happen in my life. And these build sediments of resentment and bitterness, and which, for the sake of brevity, because I don't want to make this very long, uh, act as fogs before your eyes. And rote memorization allows you to float by without confronting these serious questions about your own faith and your own relationship with Allah. Remember that what Allah already knows what is in your heart. And so when you are sitting in your own khalwa, and you know you, not to do memorized prayer, not to do regularized ibadah, but to simply sit and think about your own relationship with Allah, whether you have that type of arfan, that type of amicability with Allah, that type of trusting relationship, where the ultimate in that trust is where basically, as Allah says, you've reached the point where whatever comes from Allah is always fine and good, whether it's bad or good. So that's the ultimate. But no one starts there. That's something you work up to, and it's hard to work up to that. But that's the ultimate goal, where you actually get to a point where your sense, your understanding of the reality of creation, and the reality of the truth of Allah's power and Allah's supremacy over the world, that when the fogs are lifted, you then understand that the only thing that really is the only cause of sorrow or happiness is whether the loving relationship you have with Allah is healthy or unhealthy. And so if your love towards Allah is unhealthy, then you're unhappy. And if your love towards Allah is healthy, then you are happy. But again, that's the goal. That's what you're shooting for. But that's not where you start with. But to get there, you have to make your effort consistent throughout the year. Just working hard during Ramadan is not going to get you there. To have regular dhikr, preferably in some form of jama'ah or another, in some collectivity, and to have a regular khalwa with yourself, where you reflect upon your understanding of the self in Allah's presence and only in Allah's presence. Of course, there are then things that are, there are, Muslims will often, when it comes to the Quran, and the Quran plays a very critical role in this, Muslims often emphasize quantity when it comes to the Quran over quality. I might have mentioned this before. There was a very famous Sufi woman called Fatima. She was Ibn Arabi's teacher, or one of the most prominent teachers, one of the most prominent influences on Ibn Arabi, from Marsiya in the 7th century Hijrah, 13th AD, who got so much out of simply the Fatiha. I mean, all her ventures and journeys towards the divine, and all her teachings got out of just that one surah, the Fatiha, far more than any of us could have even imagined possible. So it is not the quantity. The point is not to race to finish the Quran X number of times a year. But the Quran should be a consistent presence in your life. And some of us, I mean, and it takes hard work. We can recite the Quran in prayer, but quite often, if you're doing prayer all your life, then it's sort of a memory reflex, and you recite it, and you could even recite it while your brain is drifting somewhere else. If that is what happens to you, then get accustomed to reciting a certain portion of the Quran that you take time to truly reflect on, even if it is just the Fatiha in your khalwa every day. To read, so for instance, if you say Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, I have a long tafsir on or a long commentary on the Fatiha. But what does it mean to you? How can you translate something as simple as Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim in your own existence? Let me stop here because I'm worried that I'm just going to go off.
Okay.
Is that good? Is that helpful?
Yes.